I think this is Rebecca's story. Take
This
us
is
through
my
this, would you?
story. That's right. And this is also about sort of has a medical spin to it going on in Utah. And this is about Mormons and cosmetic surgery, which has been in the news lately. Um, and there's a great article in the Trib. And also, I think they talked about it on Mormon Land. The question is, do Latter-day Saints turn to cosmetic surgery in a quest for perfection to please God? New body image study shows they undergo such procedures more often than most Americans. But BYU researchers say these members may be misunderstanding church theology. So that makes it sound to me like there might be sort of a correlation between the predominant religion and this cosmetic surgery. And I will tell a quick story. When I was, it was probably about 20 years ago, I had a friend visit me. She lived in the Seattle area, RFM, and she was at my house, and I had a magazine. It was one of those magazines that's mailed out for free. It was called Utah Valley Magazine. It has like ads and slick ads and articles and things like that in it. And she's thumbing through it, and she goes, "Can I take this home to Seattle?" I'm like, "Why do you want to take that home? It's just a mailer." She goes, "Because this typifies Utah. This is Utah in a nutshell. Every other page is for a cosmetic surgeon or a lawyer or a luxury home. This is Utah." And I tried to explain to my friends in Seattle what it was like, but can I just take this home? And I thought, I've never really seen myself that way, but I guess it might be true. And now I can't look at those mailers any other way. So many ads for cosmetic surgery. It seems like just more than the norm. So in this article, they talk about seeing a billboard on I-15 here in Utah. And I've seen this. It says, "God is remodeling his temple. Isn't it time that you remodel yours?" What do you guys think about that slogan? Isn't that great?
Oh, no. I'm sure it's a great slogan, but really?
But I think that they're kind of getting to people by saying that. Also, the idea that there are more cosmetic surgeons per capita than Los Angeles or in Utah instead, and that breast augmentation is higher. So these researchers at BYU decided that they would interview actual LDS men and women, predominantly women, but some men, because men do have cosmetic surgery too, and see if they could kind of get to the bottom of what this is. So what is the reality from the study that these two women did? It says, according to Brigham Young researchers, about 14% of Latter-day Saints respondents have had major cosmetic surgery. And by major, this means breast augmentation, tummy tucks, liposuction, and about 20% have undergone cosmetic enhancements. And that would include laser hair removal, Botox injections, or skin procedure. And again, this is not completely off the charts, but the national average is 4%. So there's a little bit of a difference there. So to kind of put it all on one slide, the national average for cosmetic surgery is 4%. Latter-day Saint respondents who had had some kind of major cosmetic surgery is 14%. So 10% more. I don't know if that has anything to do with tithing or what, but 10% more, it seems like. So they wanted to look and see if there was some kind of correlation with the LDS religion, what we're hearing in the pews, and this idea of perfectionism. So their survey is published. It's called Bodies at Church, Latter-day Saint Doctrine, Teaching, and Culture as Related to Body Image. And the two researchers are Sarah Coyne and Laura Barnes. They are professors at the BYU School of Family Life. And this is part of the Utah Women and Leadership Project. So I think it's very interesting because we've all kind of heard anecdotally, oh, everybody gets plastic surgery, but is that true? Looks like 10%. It might be true. So their question, of course, is what is the subtle impact of Mormonism? So from the article, it says religion in general tends to be protective of body image. In fact, individuals who report being more spiritual or religious tend to have a more positive body image than those who report lower levels, the author said. And I wonder if that's because we're all taught we are in the image of God, our body is a temple, things like that we hear our entire life. If that does promote a more positive body image, I don't know. Yes.
I'm sorry. I would suggest that religion in general, Christianity in general, tends to teach that God loves you just the way you are.
Exactly. Yep. Until he doesn't. Yeah.
I Mormonism departs from that frequently.
It does. No, it absolutely does. And that's, I think, what we're going to get into here in the survey. So given the established trends, Latter-day Saint individuals should have a very high body image. Individuals who are regularly engaging with cosmetic surgery or enhancement to improve appearances, the researchers observe, despite Apostle Jeffrey R. Hollins, I can't even say it, guidance to, I'm sorry, it's covered up by a slide here. Let me see if I can read it. His advice is to, luckily I print things out, not be obsessed with tucking and nipping and implanting and remodeling everything that can be remodeled. Now that seemed interesting to me as advice from Jeffrey R. Holland, because wasn't there something a couple years ago where he appeared at conference and suddenly seemed very refreshed? Do you remember this? People were talking about this, that he seemed to have a different little bit of a look, especially under the eyes. So people were wondering if he perhaps had a little procedure.
Rebecca, can I just say that when Jeffrey Hollins puts it this way, what it is, the interpretation that I take away from it, and I think it's quite obvious from the way he says it, is that what he's not saying is don't do any plastic surgery. What he's saying is don't take it to an extreme. And once you give permission and say don't take it to an extreme, well, now you've made it subjective. And anybody who wants to do it is going to go ahead and do it. Maybe even he did it a little bit himself.
Yep. And again, we should say there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's a very personal decision, a personal choice, and anybody can do whatever they want. But I think the researchers wanted to find out if there was some kind of undue influence or pressure that was perhaps influenced people as they made this very personal decision that just should be you, right? You and your partner and, whatever, or just you, but not certainly some pressure outside pressure that you feel from words of a prophet, words of an apostle, people at church, anything like that. So the Tribune article was really good. And there was a really, really good comment from Maria123. And I just thought I've got to read some of this because she did a really good job of summing up everything that I was trying to put together. And she says, multiple prophets and apostles have mandated that Mormon women repeatedly keep yourself attractive. And this turns normal aging into a moral failure for Mormon women. Yes, it does. Once you get to be a certain age, right? The perfection thing isn't a myth. It's a prophetic mandate. The young women of the 80s and 90s, when church leaders were openly saying this stuff, are now in their 40s and 50s. And the great point that she made is that those young women in the 70s and 80s are now raising their daughters with perhaps the same mindset ingrained that they may not even realize they have in the 90s and the 2000s. So it's something that's kind of pervasive. So Maria pulled out a couple quotes, and I did too. Here are some pictures of, let's see, we've got Spencer Kimball on the left. These are them, the prophets as young men. We have President Benson in the middle. We have the very dapper with the twinkle in his eye, even then, Gordon B., right? Same twinkle right there.
He looks so cute. All I can say is if I were a woman and I weren't around, I should be in love with Gordon B. Hinckley.
I feel like you might have had a man crush on him back in the 90s. Do you think?
Yeah.
Perhaps. So anyway, President Kimball said in the 70s, I tell young women who seem to have missed their chance for a desirable marriage that they should do all in their power to make themselves physically attractive. So here you go. The words of the prophet. God's mouth, prophet's ears to the young women. You better be physically attractive. President Benson in 1988 said, keep yourself attractive. And Hinckley, of course, said, make yourself attractive. So we definitely got this message, although at the same time juxtaposed with modesty. Be attractive, but not too attractive. And don't be attractive in an immodest way. It was very hard to balance it. And you often would get it wrong, right? And then you'd get shamed by your peers. I'm sure that none of us can forget this, right? The young single adult devotional where our good old Elder Ballard made this comment. And I have to say, I can't find this footage anywhere. It seems to have disappeared. Maybe you guys know where it is, but I do have this transcript.
This one looks like Elder Ballard and Todd Christopherson had a baby.
At least I got AI to have him, put lipstick on. I was pretty impressed with what they said. They added some nail polish too.
I don't know. And it matches the tie. It makes that tie pop.
And they nailed it. Rather than have Jesus on the walls, it's got more apostles on the walls.
Do you know what? I feel like AI is getting more, it's really honing its ability to portray Mormonism. So anyway, he said to young single adults, and this was less than 10 years ago, he said, and every time we look at you, I know that you're just waiting for me to talk about marriage, aren't you? Of course we are. I will not want to disappoint you. I just simply say to you, brethren, wake up. Open your eyes and look around a little. And you beautiful girls, don't wander around looking like men. put on a little lipstick now and then and look a little charming. It's that simple. I don't know why we make this whole process so hard. So his advice is, just make sure you glamour up, right? Glow up, everybody. So there you go. There were several other quotes like this, but for the sake of time, I won't share them. I do, however, want to show this, just a clip. This is a movie called Fat Fighters. It's kind of an informational film made at BYU in 1971, where you have some co-eds that would like to lose some weight are being strongly encouraged to lose some weight by their peers and their church leaders. And they form a support group. These priesthood holders come in and talk to them about not eating so much. They even bring their boyfriends in to shame them and tell them they're scarfing down everything. If you know what the word scarf means, you're as old as I am. But anyway, Bill, maybe we can just play the first 2 minutes of the intro here.
I like red licorice, and I just like regular food, just cornbread, biscuits, and beans, and fried chicken, and, just food.
I eat too much, too often.
When I get nervous, I eat, and when I'm depressed, I eat, and I just eat anytime.
Well, I don't like myself fat. I really, in fact, I could say I hate myself, and I feel really self-conscious around other people. I feel like everyone's watching me, and I feel like, a fat person just isn't lovable.
My parents are overweight. It could have been from their example, but I think it's just because of myself. I just never controlled myself or my dieting or anything.
I'm too fat because I eat too much.
Well, maybe I think food is security.
It kind of numbs me.
I don't date very much. I date a few times, and most of the guys are just friends. So it doesn't really matter anyway.
My sister came up to see me, and she's lost a lot of weight, and she's just, wherever we went together, everybody was always, she's your sister? Wow. Your sisters? I don't see how you can be sisters. You don't even look at all alike. And here she is, 95 pounds,
Mm-hmm. So what were they telling you, Claudia?
Your big sister's a fat slob.
Yeah, so that's the kind of movie they were making at BYU. And as you watch the whole thing, you can find this on a channel called Hard to Find Mormon Videos, where they have all these old films that you may remember from the past. You can also find it on Mormon movie reviews with Dee Vase. He has a channel too where he reviews all these old films. But it's interesting because as the film goes on, it's not about the health of the girls. It's about the fact that they're not dating and they're not married. That's the concern. That's why they need to lose weight. And like I said, they sit and they go through sessions with priesthood leaders who ask them, why are you doing this? What's wrong? I don't know if anybody's trained to talk to these girls, but the final scene, several of them have managed to lose some weight. Some are dating, 2 are engaged. So complete success story. But again, the focus is not on their health or well-being, mental well-being. It's all about how you look. And as the one girl said, who didn't look overweight at all to me, a lot of those girls are just fine and normal. My sister's 95 pounds, she's the one that's cute. So yeah, that ideal, that's rough. What do you guys think about that film?
Well, I don't watch TV as much as I used to when I was a teenager, but wasn't there a popular TV show on rather recently called The Biggest Loser or something?
I've seen every episode. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
So, and that's about losing weight, right?
Yeah, it's like that. Exactly. Yeah.
And it was
people
popular.
through hell. Yep.
So we still have it with us.
We still have it with us. That's exactly right. But I think they tried to focus a little on health, or at least give health and exercise tips. And so I don't know. I guess the idea is this is from BYU, and they talk about the pressure at school, the pressure to be thin, the pressure to be perfect. And I think that's what we're talking about here.
I agree. And I think that it's very pragmatic from the church's point of view. I don't know that they care how much the co-eds weigh, as that they're not getting married.
Yep, exactly.
The only thing I thought it was at least a little humorous that the one female is sitting and eating something during the interview.
It was a salad.
It was a salad. That's my other
Yeah.
complaint. Some of them were eating healthy food, you know.
Yeah.
You have to eat.
And then we
Yeah,
get
but
the
during the
montage.
interview,
With Rocky, it's working out, but with these gals, it's eating the eating
Yeah.
montage.
Oh, it gets worse. Like they go to the refrigerator and there's like this whole pie and they just start eating. I'm thinking, this is not realistic. Come on. I was a co-ed. That's not realistic. So, and what's interesting is in the comments on one of these platforms that I told you this movie is available, somebody commented and said, you know what? I was brought in at the end as a ringer on this film back in the day because nobody lost any weight and they needed to show somebody who had lost weight. So I was brought in as a girl who had lost weight. And it's true, in the final scene, there's a girl sitting there who you haven't seen through the entire episode. And she's going, yeah, I feel good. And I lost weight. Well, she was a ringer. So there you go.
It was a 95-year-old little sister.
It was the 95
Or 95 pound.
Anyway, we digress. All right, let's go back to our
nonagenarians, huh?
The nonagenarians, that's right.
My
All
fan
right,
base.
let's put the slides back up and I'll finish up here. Finish strong. Okay, so religious reasons for cosmetic surgery, right? So one woman who underwent nose surgery and breast augmentation told researchers, I prayed. I asked God if it was the right thing to do. I felt very comforted that it was right. And there was nothing that I was doing to offend God. And the researchers did discover that there was this religious impulse that impacted individuals' decisions and their need for perfection. And again, I think, if you're LDS, you're going to pray about every major life decision. Where should I go to school? Who should I marry? And this is something that's a major decision, a personal decision. So you're going to pray. But the concern, of course, is this idea of perfectionism. I've lived in Utah County, the heart of Mormonism, for years and years. And there definitely is, I kind of make the joke that there's kind of a hierarchy in the ward. Like I was always in Scouts, right? I had all boys. I was the Cub mistress. I was that person. And I'd go to the church on Wednesday nights for Scouts and young men and young women at the same time. And the young women leaders would walk in and it was like slow motion, hair blowing back, they were just perfect. And I'm guessing they were kind of called to their callings to be an example to the girls because I've made the joke, they look like Twilight vampires. They were just, wow. And I was over in Scouts, covered with mud, wearing denim, going, oh yeah, those girls, they'll never talk to me. So I think in some cases that does exist. And I don't know, maybe you can say in the comments if you know what I'm talking about, but I think it's there where you see people all the time. You're living right on top of each other in a neighborhood, in a ward, and you see them constantly. And so there is a constant comparison. It can be physically, it can be financial, it can be who's more of a spiritual giant. And I'm not saying that men don't have this issue too, because, they can also feel, physically, there can be something that they want to work on, or I think it's more financially with men, but there's comparison, at least in my perspective, living in the heart of Utah County. So,
it's interesting on that last slide that this one woman who prayed about it felt that there was nothing that she was doing that would offend God.
Mm-hmm.
She probably doesn't know that God is actually in favor of cosmetic surgery. In fact, God had the Virgin Mary get cosmetic surgery before he married her.
That's
Little known
true.
fact.
That is true. You're right.
You can find that in the Journal of Discourses.
I know what you're talking about. That's exactly right. But it does bring the question up, and people have said this before, you have cosmetic surgery, and if Mormons are having more than others, we believe in the resurrection where you will be returned to your perfect state when you were 32 years old. That's what my parents told me. I don't know if it's still 32 years old, but it's supposed to be 32 years old. So does that mean that suddenly everything that you had done and paid a lot of money for just kind of disappears? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that would rise with you in the resurrection, but who knows? I'm not an expert on that. Maybe
I don't know either.
Maybe it's what you choose. Like Jesus gets to choose to have the wounds of the nails in his hands and in his feet with him in the resurrection. Maybe you can choose whether you keep your plastic surgery.
Maybe you can say, taking the nose, didn't like what they did with my brows. I'll definitely take maybe we can pick and choose. I don't know. We're supposed to be happy in the next life, so I'm sure it'll all work out.
Meg Ryan will be losing a lot of that.
They did touch on the idea of modest is hottest, because, of course, that's ingrained into Mormon culture. When asked about the language of modesty, the participants described feeling judged. Absolutely. Some 30% see modesty as having a positive impact and on their own body image, but 47% report it as negative. And that itself is its own podcast, the modest is hottest issue, and just the idea with this absolute obsession with modesty. I was once in a dressing room at Kohl's, and there was a mother and a teenage daughter in the dressing room next to me, and they were trying on clothes and shoes. And the mother kept saying, "Those shoes aren't modest. Take those off." And she was going, "Mom," and the mom was going, "Those shoes are not modest." And I wanted to I tried to kind of look under to see if I could see what the hell kind of shoes aren't modest.
Stiletto heels or something?
Or toe cleavage. That's a thing. I don't know.
What?
But anyway, Google that. Well, I'm not going to teach you about that.
I'm not going to Google that.
Anyway, it can
Make
go
sure you
too
turn your
far.
safe filter on.
Yeah, filter on. We're going to get demonetized just because I said toe cleavage. Okay.
Here come the
All
bot.
right, let's move on. All right, garments and body image. Now, we've talked about this on the newscast multiple times because there have been so many stories about garments in the news, but this kind of confirms what I always felt personally. Some 30% describe wearing garments, underclothing worn by LDS, as having a negative effect on their body image, making them feel frumpy and unattractive. Absolutely. Sort of a body dysmorphia. And that's something we've covered before. Some women, myself included, felt that with garments. And I can't even bring myself to wear sleeves. It's very difficult anymore because I just that feeling, it's very hard to get away from. So that's definitely part of it in this survey that they're talking about. Women are greatly impacted by the words of their leaders, having to wear garments. I mean, it changes everything about you. The idea of to run and not be weary and walk and look hot. That's not actually the phrase, but RFM, do you know what the real phrase is?
And not have toe cleavage.
That's it. No, and not faint. It's the promise of the word of wisdom. And they say that nearly 6 in 10 in this survey, 57%, say that the word of wisdom tended to have a positive impact on body image. And I thought about that. And I thought, I feel it's because people go, you know what? I'm not doing all those things they tell me not to do. So I can feel like I'm living healthy. However, you're probably doing a lot of things that they don't mention, right? Like mega Mountain Dews and things like that. So I don't know if this really translates. Do you have any thoughts on that, Bill? I know you were interested in that part of the article a little bit when we talked earlier.
On the word of wisdom.
Yeah.
And the only thing I was going to tackle sort of as we were talking about, you using that, and I had seen the story too, is that when you keep people from, again, not in connection with the way you're using the story, but my angle to the story was that you're keeping people from having real spiritual experiences for those who maybe, could use a psychedelic drug, for instance, or to feel more encouragement to use cannabis if you're allowed to in your state. For instance, Utah allows medical use for it. And to allow people to have access to those experiences, those would be really enlightening for folks. They would be able to sort of sort out things inside themselves that they wouldn't have otherwise. But from this particular angle, I was thinking about like circumcision. That's a cosmetic surgery. And Heavenly Father seems to have no problem with cutting the skin off of, men's genitals. Yeah. Encourages folks to do it. RFM, you're rolling your eyes, but is it
might be medical as opposed to cosmetic? Unless you're a streaker or a flasher, then it might be cosmetic.
If Abraham says you have to cut the skin off your genitals, I don't think that's medical. That's just a religious cosmetic
that I would expect would make you look better.
Right. There's debate. There's ongoing debate on that. And I think we used to all think it was medical. Now we know it's cosmetic.
At the nudist colony. One thing I want to say about run and not be weary, walk and not faint is correct. And we, of course, as Latter-day Saints, associate that with the word of wisdom, section 89 in the Doctrine and Covenants. However, it's good to keep in mind that this is not original to section 89. It is actually borrowed from Isaiah, this phrase. And I think everybody knows if anybody knows Isaiah, they know the phrase from chapter 40, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. You remember that one from verse 31, which then continues. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint.
I think in a few more weeks, you guys will learn to not ask me questions about your articles.
I love the
supposed to be
answers
an
that you give.
ongoing
I love your insights,
dialogue.
though.
We have to include each other, even if it takes 5 hours. No, I'm totally kidding. Well, and I do think, speaking of circumcision and the resurrection, I've said this before, it's going to be a lot of butterfly foreskins flapping around looking for their owners. That's what I think. You're going to get hit in the head with one if you don't watch out. They're going to be everywhere. So,
Especially the ones that David collected and
oh
Samson.
gosh, yeah, that's right.
They
Okay.
had big foreskin collections. Me, it was comic books. Them, it was foreskins. Who am I to judge?
He was
To
only
each
asked to
their
get
own.
100 and he brought back 200. So.
That's because David was an overachiever.
I was just going to say that.
Can you
All
imagine
right.
emptying the bag out and some of them are sticking at the bottom and you got to
Oh my
reach
God.
in and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a good book to read, and other books are banned. Yeah. This is great. This is absolutely great. So,
I think in a
as-
former life, I was the guy who had to count the foreskins.
143.
I picture like the
That's what
count,
he-
right? On
seconds.
Sesame Street, 1 foreskin,
Yeah, that's
right?
what they didn't say one
2.
Mississippi. They said one Philistine foreskin, 2 Philistine foreskin.
300 Philistine foreskin. Yeah. Okay. Now we're really jumping the shark. All right. As we finish the article, they also touched on diversity issues. For many beehive state, culture is viewed as being particularly toxic in terms of body image, especially given that it is far less diverse. And this is true. There is one look, as I have in the picture here, that seems to dominate the landscape right there. So it can be difficult when there are questions of diversity. And again, that could be its own podcast too. So what can we do about this scenario? As we finish up the article, there are some positive practices that we can do here. We can engage in open conversations about how church practices, such as garments, the word of wisdom, modesty, are related to body image. I feel like we do that here on the newscast. We've covered all of those topics and probably will again. You can emphasize acceptance, love, and warmth over any outward appearance. You can focus on attachment to God as a primary way to reduce body image concerns. That is my picture of Barbie Jesus. I hope nobody thinks that's
It's Barbie
sacrilegious.
Jesus. I have
It's
one
Barbie
question about Barbie Jesus, and it's
Yeah,
not
what's-
about toe cleavage.
Well, you've got to let it go.
He's got to
Seriously.
be
We're-
circumcised, right?
We're going to talk after the show. Yeah. Okay. Can you mute him, Bill? All right. Also, celebrate and encourage diversity. That's a good one. And focus on principles. Oh my gosh. Can any of you guys read that under the slides? Oh,
No, I can't
principles
read anything.
of
Under the,
modesty instead of practices. That's what it was. Yeah. Instead of just saying, you shouldn't wear this, you shouldn't do that, which in my day, that was it. I mean, I've said this before. I was once accused of being too tan and it was drawing attention to my body. I mean, how humiliating is that as a 15-year-old who's working out on the church welfare farm every Saturday? Thanks, Dad. And that's why I was tan. Okay. So
who said that you were too tan, and who's
a leader,
unwanted
a
attention were you
young
drawing?
men's youth leader told me.
A youth leader, that means a grown-up guy.
A grown-up guy told me that the guys were talking about how tan I was. So there you go. Yeah.
So what?
It was
You're
rough to be
supposed
a young
carry
woman in the
parasol
80s.
all around?
They told me to stay home until I was paler. So there you go. Anyway, I think that's the end. Is that the end of my
Wow.
story? It is the end of my story. So that's it. So that's the scoop on Mormons and cosmetic surgery. And a lot more none of you asked to hear. So,
It was a fascinating story.
and I think we
Still
have
waiting to find
Bill
out what toe cleavage is.
now. Oh my gosh.